Move it, move it, Clara muttered, her grip tightening on the steering wheel as the line of cars ahead crept through the intersection. The light flickered from green to yellow, and then to red before she could make it across. She slammed the wheel of her aging Subaru in frustration. "Mommy, you said a bad word," piped up a small voice from the back seat. Clara glanced in the rearview mirror and smiled at the reprimanding pout of her 4-year-old daughter, Ellie, who sat bundled in her puffy pink jacket and sparkly green dress. "You're right, baby. That's a quarter for the swear jar," Clara said, fishing out a coin and passing it back to Ellie. "You caught me fair and square." Ellie pocketed the quarter with a grin. They were racing against the clock to reach the Christmas village in the next town over. It was the last evening the festivities would be open, and Clara desperately wanted Ellie to meet Santa. Between juggling her work, studies, and keeping their tiny apartment in order, time had been a rare commodity all month. This was their chance, and Clara couldn't bear to disappoint her daughter. By the time they reached the village, Clara's heart sank. The streets were nearly deserted, and most of the festive lights had already been turned off. She bundled Ellie in her arms and rushed toward the central square, her breath visible in the frigid air. The empty throne where Santa had once sat confirmed her worst fear. "Mommy," Ellie's voice wavered, her wide eyes brimming with tears. "Is Santa gone? How will he know what I want for Christmas?" Before Clara could find the words to comfort her daughter, a cheery voice interrupted. "Excuse me, did I hear someone say they needed to speak with Santa?" Clara turned to see a young woman dressed as an elf. Her candy cane-striped tights, green skirt, and a playful smile instantly captured Ellie's attention. "I'm Marcy, one of Santa's helpers," the woman said with an exaggerated, squeaky voice. "And you must be Ellie. If you have a message for Santa, I can deliver it for you." Ellie shook her head fiercely. "No. I have to tell him myself." Clara's cheeks flushed with embarrassment. "I'm sorry," she's determined. Marcy's eyes sparkled as she crouched to Ellie's level. "Well, if it's that important, I might be able to help. But you'll have to wait here while I work my magic." She winked at Clara and dashed into a nearby building. Moments later, a familiar ho, ho, ho rang out. Ellie's face lit up as Marcy reappeared, now wearing an oversized Santa suit complete with a fluffy beard and a twinkling hat. The suit was hilariously ill-fitting, but Ellie didn't seem to notice. She rushed forward to throw her arms around Santa with unrestrained glee. Clara's heart melted as she watched Marcy bring the magic of Christmas alive for her daughter. She snapped pictures while Ellie chattered excitedly about her wishes, her earlier disappointment forgotten. "Thank you," Clara said quietly as Ellie skipped in circles with her candy cane. "You didn't have to do this." Marcy, now back in her elf guise, gave her a warm smile. "It's what Christmas is all about. Seeing her smile makes it worth it." Clara's cheeks flushed. "Well, thank you. Truly." Marcy tilted her head playfully. "And you? What would you like Santa to bring you?" Clara laughed softly, shaking her head. "More hours in the day, maybe?" "I'll see what I can do," Marcy replied, her grin lingering as their eyes met for a fleeting moment longer than necessary. The following evening, Clara found herself walking home from the library, her arms full of nursing textbooks. The snow fell in thick, lazy flakes, muffling the sounds of the world around her. Ellie was staying with her father for the holiday, and with some rare time to herself, Clara was looking forward to a quiet evening. She passed a small, glowing sign that read, "Flanagan's Bar, Holiday Specials Inside." Curiosity and the promise of warmth pulled her in. The cozy interior was nearly empty, save for a couple at a corner table and a bartender wiping down the counter. Clara's breath caught as she recognized the woman behind the bar. "Marcy?" she asked, incredulous. Marcy looked up, her eyes widening with recognition before a warm grin spread across her face. "Well, if it isn't my favorite mom and daughter duo. No Santa suit tonight, I'm afraid." Clara chuckled, taking a seat at the bar. "I almost didn't recognize you without the elf ears." Marcy leaned on the counter, her eyes twinkling. "And yet here you are. What can I get you?" The conversation flowed effortlessly between them, as if they had known each other far longer than the few brief moments shared at the Christmas village. They laughed about holiday mishaps, exchanged stories about their work and lives, and even spoke candidly about the weight of balancing dreams and responsibilities. Clara felt an ease she hadn't experienced in years. There was something so grounding about Marcy's presence. As the night wore on, the snow outside turned into a full-blown storm. Marcy glanced at the window, her brow furrowing slightly. "I'll walk you home. This storm's getting worse." Clara hesitated, but the warmth of the bar and the pull of Marcy's presence made her accept. The two stepped out into the swirling snow, the chill air stinging their faces as they trudged through the icy streets. Laughter echoed between them as they stumbled over patches of ice, their breath forming little clouds in the air. By the time they reached Clara's apartment, they were both soaked and shivering, their cheeks flushed from the cold. Clara opened the door, gesturing for Marcy to come inside. "You're freezing," she said, her voice soft with concern. "Let me get you some dry clothes." Marcy hesitated, a touch of vulnerability in her eyes. "I don't want to impose." "Nonsense," Clara insisted. "You're not walking back in this weather." After a moment's pause, Marcy relented, her eyes meeting Clara's with quiet gratitude. She changed into a pair of Clara's flannel pajamas, the fabric soft and warm against her skin. When she returned to the living room, Clara had made 2 steaming mugs of cocoa, the rich scent filling the air. They sat on the couch, the storm howling outside, and shared the quiet comfort of being in each other's presence. Marcy's laughter still lingered in Clara's mind, and she found herself stealing glances at her. How the light from the fire reflected in her dark eyes, the soft curve of her lips when she smiled. It was a tenderness that Clara hadn't allowed herself to feel in a long time. The space between them grew smaller as they spoke, their voices growing quieter. Marcy's knee brushed Clara's, and for a moment, neither of them pulled away. There was an unspoken understanding in the air, a spark that neither could ignore. Marcy reached for Clara's hand, her fingers grazing the back of Clara's hand, tentative at first. The touch sent a warm shiver through Clara's chest, and she met Marcy's gaze. "I'm glad you're here," Clara murmured, her voice thick with emotion. Marcy's eyes softened, and she leaned in slightly. "Me too." The moment seemed to stretch, heavy with anticipation. Clara could feel her heartbeat quicken, the air between them charged. Slowly, as if pulled by some magnetic force, their lips met in a soft, hesitant kiss. The warmth of cocoa still lingered on their mouths, but the kiss was full of something deeper, something more intense. It wasn't rushed, it was gentle, exploring, as if they were both savoring the moment. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathing more heavily, their foreheads resting together. Clara's pulse raced in a way it hadn't in years. She had built walls around herself, afraid of letting anyone too close, but Marcy was different. The connection between them felt natural, undeniable. "I've wanted this," Marcy whispered, her voice barely audible. Clara nodded, her heart in her throat. "Me too." When Clara woke the next morning, the soft light of winter filtered through the curtains, casting a warm glow over the room. For a moment, she was disoriented, unsure of where she was. The quiet, the calm. Then she remembered. She wasn't alone. Marcy was curled up beside her on the couch, her head resting gently on Clara's shoulder. The comforting warmth of Marcy's body pressed against hers, the steady rise and fall of her breath. It felt natural, like a place Clara could stay forever. Clara's heart beat faster as she slowly became aware of the intimacy of the moment. She hadn't let anyone get this close to her in years. Not since Ellie was born. Yet here was Marcy, offering her a kind of closeness that was both comforting and exhilarating. Clara's body ached in ways she hadn't expected. Her pulse quickened, her thoughts drifting to how Marcy's soft skin had felt against hers when they had kissed the night before. Marcy stirred, her dark lashes fluttering as she slowly opened her eyes. Her gaze met Clara's, and a smile spread across her face, a smile that spoke of shared moments and a quiet understanding. There was something tender in Marcy's eyes, something that made Clara's chest tighten with an emotion she wasn't ready to name, but couldn't deny. "Good morning," Marcy murmured, her voice thick with sleep but warm and inviting. Her eyes searched Clara's face, and Clara saw a flicker of vulnerability there. Clara smiled, her lips curving gently. "Merry Christmas," she whispered, her voice barely more than a breath, as if the weight of the moment might break if spoken too loudly. "Merry Christmas, Clara," Marcy replied softly, her hand reaching out to tuck a stray lock of hair behind Clara's ear. The simple gesture sent a shiver down Clara's spine, her body responding instinctively to the warmth of Marcy's touch. Marcy's hand lingered on Clara's face, her thumb brushing over her cheek, a silent invitation. The air between them thickened, and Clara's breath caught. She didn't pull away. She couldn't. Instead, she leaned into Marcy's touch, closing the space between them. The silence stretched, heavy with the unspoken words neither of them seemed ready to say. Slowly, Marcy moved closer, her face inches from Clara's. Their eyes locked, and in that moment, everything seemed to fall away. The world outside didn't matter anymore. It was just the two of them, caught in this delicate moment, suspended in time. Marcy's lips brushed against Clara's, light and tentative at first, as if asking for permission. Clara's heart raced, and without thinking, she leaned into the kiss, her lips meeting Marcy's with a soft, urgent hunger. It wasn't just a kiss. It was a promise, a question, an answer all at once. Their lips moved together slowly, exploring, tasting, as if they were both savoring the moment, hesitant but yearning for more. Clara's hand found its way to Marcy's shoulder, pulling her closer, and Marcy responded, her arms wrapping around Clara, bringing their bodies flush together. The heat between them intensified, their kiss deepening as their bodies pressed closer. Clara could feel the steady rhythm of Marcy's heartbeat, her warmth radiating through the layers of clothing. It felt like everything was aligned, like this was exactly where they were meant to be. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathless, their foreheads resting against each other. Clara's chest rose and fell in quick succession, her mind racing with emotions she couldn't fully comprehend. Marcy's eyes were dark with desire, but there was something else there too, affection, tenderness, and a quiet longing that mirrored Clara's own. "I've wanted this," Marcy whispered, her voice husky, filled with emotion. She lifted her hand to Clara's face again, her fingers tracing the line of her jaw, as if memorizing every inch of her. Clara swallowed hard, her own voice trembling. "Me too." The air between them was electric, charged with something unspoken but undeniable. Slowly, Clara shifted, her lips brushing against Marcy's once more. The kiss was slower this time, more deliberate, as if they were both savoring the feeling of being close. Clara could feel Marcy's hands moving to the small of her back, pulling her in even closer. The sensation of their bodies pressed together sent a rush of warmth through Clara's veins. They broke the kiss only for a moment, both of them struggling to catch their breath. Clara's hands wandered, finding the hem of Marcy's shirt, her fingers grazing over soft skin. Marcy's eyes fluttered shut, a soft sigh escaping her lips as Clara's touch lingered, gentle but insistent. "Are you sure?" Clara asked softly, her voice thick with emotion. She needed to be sure. This was more than just a moment, it was something real, something that could change everything. Marcy opened her eyes, locking gazes with Clara. There was no hesitation in her expression, only warmth and desire. "I'm sure," she whispered, her voice steady and certain. Clara leaned in again, her lips finding Marcy's in a kiss that was deeper this time, more urgent. The room seemed to fade away as they lost themselves in each other. The only thing that mattered the feeling of Marcy's hands on her skin, the taste of her lips, the warmth of her body pressed against hers. They moved together slowly, carefully, savoring each touch, each kiss. It wasn't about rushing, it was about connection, about building something new, something fragile but beautiful. They took their time, learning each other, finding a rhythm that was uniquely theirs. When the world outside finally intruded again, it was with the sound of the wind howling against the windows. But inside, It was warm, and Clara knew, deep in her heart, that this was only the beginning. "Merry Christmas," Clara whispered again, her voice soft but full of meaning. Marcy smiled, her hand resting gently on Clara's cheek. "Merry Christmas, Clara. Here's to new beginnings."